My days began with the sharp beeping of hospital monitors and ended with the hollow quiet of deserted hallways. I wore my white coat like armor, pushing through fatigue and loneliness with every step. The shifts felt endless, but I carried them like proof of my purpose. Patients leaned on me, colleagues admired my resilience, but the truth is, I wasn't doing it all for me. I was fighting for a dream that wasn't mine. I was fighting for Alan. Weekends slipped away first. Friends stopped inviting me to brunches because they knew I'd be stuck under fluorescent lights, answering emergencies. Holidays blurred into 12-hour marathons in the ER, my laughter replaced by the hiss of ventilators and the buzz of heart monitors. Still, I didn't complain. I told myself sacrifice was just love in motion, and I had plenty to give. Every extra hour meant another step toward Alan's business, another step toward our future. At least, that's what I believed. Alan never really got it. He'd sigh when I packed my bag for another double shift, muttering about cold dinners and empty nights. And every time I'd soften my voice and remind him, I'm doing this for us, for you. Those words became my mantra, whispered into sterile corridors to keep me going. I held on to the idea that exhaustion was temporary, but his success, our success, would be lasting. I didn't know how quickly that illusion could break, or how violently. Some nights, I'd drive home with my hands trembling from exhaustion, the steering wheel slick with sweat, my body begging for rest. But the moment I pictured Alan's proud smile, I'd convince myself it was worth it. I imagined him standing in front of his business one day, keys in hand, thanking me for every hour I poured into those endless shifts. That vision became my fuel. It was like carrying a secret flame inside me, one I refused to let burn out. I still remember the ache in my legs after those double shifts, how my shoes would squeak against the sterile floors as if mocking me with every step. I'd grab a stale sandwich from the cafeteria, force it down in minutes, and rush back to the ward before my break was even over. Sacrifice became second nature, as ordinary to me as brushing my teeth. I thought love was supposed to hurt sometimes, and I wore that hurt like a medal. At home, though, the silence was deafening. I'd unlock the door to find the lights off, dinner untouched, the house colder than I remembered. Sometimes Alan would be awake, sitting on the couch, frustration written all over his face. "Another double?" he'd ask, not even looking at me. I'd swallow the sting of his disappointment and force a smile, answering the way I always did. "Yes, but it's for us." I wanted so badly to believe he heard the love behind those words. There were nights when I'd collapse into bed just before sunrise, the smell of disinfectant still clinging to my hair and skin. My body would ache, my eyes heavy, but my heart clung to the idea that every sacrifice was bringing us closer to something greater. I thought I was building a bridge to our future, one exhausting shift at a time. And I held on to that belief with everything I had, even when it nearly broke me. The truth is, I craved reassurance as much as rest. A gentle word from Alan, a kiss on the forehead, something to remind me that he saw me, that he valued what I was doing. Instead, I often got silence, or worse, complaints about what I wasn't giving him. He didn't see the toll it took, the way I sometimes cried in the shower just to let the stress out before facing him. I kept telling myself he'd understand one day, when his dream came alive. I thought love was about sacrifice, and I was willing to sacrifice everything. My time, my body, my laughter, even my weekends. But what I didn't realize then was how fragile that balance really was. How one shift, just one, could turn my entire world upside down. And I had no idea that shift was already waiting for me. I was scheduled for a brutal 24-hour shift, the kind that left you running on caffeine and sheer willpower. But halfway through, things changed. Someone else volunteered to cover the rest, and suddenly, I was free. 12 hours instead of 24. Relief washed over me like cool water on burning skin. For once, I wasn't dragging myself home at dawn. I had the rare chance to surprise Alan, and the thought alone filled me with a quiet, bubbling joy. On the way out, I grabbed my phone and typed quickly, fingers still stiff from handling charts and gloves all night. "Love, I'm coming home early today, bringing pizza and beer." It felt playful, almost like a little celebration for us. I imagined his face lighting up, maybe even the two of us laughing together after weeks of missed moments. Just the thought made the weight of fatigue lift a little. For the first time in days, I felt hopeful. When he didn't answer, I brushed it off. He was probably asleep, I told myself. After all, it was early afternoon, and Alan always liked his naps. With a grin, I stopped by our favorite pizza place, balancing the warm box in one arm and a bag with cold beer in the other. My heart was light, my steps quick. I was ready to walk in quietly, surprise him, and maybe, just maybe, remind us both why I'd been working so hard. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house looked so still it almost felt staged. The curtains were drawn, no music, no television humming in the background, just silence. Balancing the pizza and beer, I slipped the key into the lock as quietly as I could. I wanted the surprise to feel sweet, playful, a stolen moment in the middle of our busy lives. My heart was racing, but not from nerves, from anticipation. I eased the door open, stepping inside with the smell of melted cheese and warm crust filling the air. The house smelled faintly of Alan's cologne, too, lingering like a promise. I paused for a second, picturing him waking up groggy, hair tousled, smiling at the sight of me standing there with his favorite dinner. That image made me grin like a fool, even as I tiptoed across the living room. I thought I was walking into love. Each step echoed louder than I expected, though the house remained unnervingly quiet. No footsteps, no voice calling out my name. I balanced the pizza box against my hip and whispered softly, "Alan?" But there was no reply, just the creak of the floorboards under my weight as I headed down the hall. With every step, excitement tangled with something else, something I couldn't quite name yet. I pushed the bedroom door halfway open, careful not to let it creak too loud, expecting to see him sprawled across the bed in his usual careless way. The pizza box felt warm against my hands, the condensation from the beer cans already dampening the paper bag. My lips were curved in a smile I didn't even realize I was wearing, the kind that comes when you're convinced you're about to be met with love. For a heartbeat, I stood in the doorway, breathing in the faint mix of laundry detergent and Alan's cologne. My chest swelled with a sense of reward, as if all those missed nights, all those sacrifices were about to pay off in this one simple moment. I pictured him stretching, blinking at me in surprise, his face softening into the smile I longed to see. That thought alone made my exhaustion fade away. But something about the silence pressed harder against me. The air felt thick, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I tightened my grip on the pizza box, shifting the bag of beer in my other hand, and took one step closer to the bed. I thought I was sneaking in to wake my husband with laughter and comfort food. What I didn't know was that I was seconds away from waking into a nightmare. The sight hit me before the sound did. Alan wasn't asleep. He wasn't alone either. There he was, tangled in sheets that still carried my scent, his body pressed against hers. Vanessa. Her laugh had just slipped out, light and careless, until the door creaked wider and their eyes snapped toward me. In that instant, time fractured. The pizza slid from my hands, the bag of beer crashing to the floor with a hollow thud. I froze, my heart pounding so violently I could hear it in my ears. My face drained of color, but inside, a fire roared to life. His eyes widened, her smirk vanished, and the silence between us felt sharper than any scalpel I'd ever held. My throat burned, but the words came out cold, steady, almost unrecognizable to me. "While I was working for our future, this is what you were doing?" Alan's mouth opened, but no sound came. Vanessa clutched the sheets to her chest, shrinking under my gaze. I stood there, shaking, but it wasn't weakness. It was rage crawling up my spine, demanding to be heard. In that moment, every sleepless night, every double shift, every sacrifice I had made pulsed through me like a drumbeat, turning pain into fury. I couldn't tear my eyes away from them. Alan's skin flushed, not with love or desire, but with the shame of being caught. My hands trembled at my sides, but I didn't step back. The room reeked of betrayal, sweat, perfume, and the faint trace of my own detergent on those sheets. Every detail carved itself into my memory like a wound that would never heal. Vanessa had the audacity to cover her face, as if I were the intruder here. My lips curled into something between a laugh and a sob. How many nights had I dragged myself home half dead from the hospital, thinking Alan was waiting for me? How many times had I told myself my absence was temporary, that my love would hold us together? And here he was, filling that emptiness with the ghost of his past. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to shatter the perfect picture of them lying there. Instead, I stood taller, my voice steady but sharp, cutting through the silence like glass. I was breaking myself apart to build a future for us, and this is what you built instead. The words hung in the air, heavier than any slap. Alan flinched, but I wasn't done, not even close. Alan finally managed to speak, his voice cracking as he stammered my name. But I didn't hear remorse in it, just fear of being exposed. Vanessa tugged the blanket tighter around herself, avoiding my eyes like a coward. I felt a bitter taste rise in my mouth, the taste of years wasted, of loyalty twisted into a joke. My chest rose and fell, my breath quick and shallow, but my anger steadied me. I stepped farther into the room, each footfall louder than their pathetic silence. "Do you even understand what you've done?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. Alan reached out a hand as if to calm me, to reel me back in, but I recoiled as if his touch were poison. That hand had been mine to hold, mine to trust. And now it was filthy. For a second I almost pitied him, this small, pathetic man caught between cowardice and shame. Almost. But pity burned away fast, replaced by something hotter, wilder, unstoppable. I felt the fury swelling inside me, pressing against my ribs, begging to erupt, and I knew I wouldn't keep it in much longer. Something inside me snapped. My voice tore through the house before I even realized I was shouting. "Do you know how many nights I spent at the hospital, exhausted, starving, barely holding myself together, just to save money for your stupid dream?" The words exploded out of me, echoing off the walls, drowning out their pathetic gasps. My throat burned, but I didn't stop. I yanked the covers off them with a violent pull, the thin fabric flying to the floor like the last shred of their lies. Vanessa squealed, shrinking back into the mattress, while Alan's face twisted into panic. I pointed straight at him, my fingers shaking, not from fear but from fury that had finally broken loose. "While I was bleeding myself dry for you, this is how you thanked me? Rolling around with leftovers from your past?" Alan stuttered, tripping over excuses, but I cut him off with another scream. The years of silence, of swallowing his sighs and complaints, roared out of me in one wave. I wasn't the quiet, patient wife anymore. I was a storm, and he was standing right in the middle of it. "Do you even know what it feels like to run on 2 hours of sleep?" I shouted, my chest heaving. "To choke down a stale sandwich in 5 minutes before rushing back to save someone's life? To miss birthdays, holidays, weekends, because I believed in you?" My voice cracked, but it only made me louder. Years of sacrifice came boiling to the surface, every memory now drenched in betrayal. Alan scrambled for words, but they came out thin, pathetic. "Regina, please, it's not what it looks like." His face was pale, his hands trembling, and for a second I almost laughed. "Not what it looks like?" He was half naked, tangled with Vanessa in our bed, my bed, the same one I used to crawl into, too tired to even cry. Vanessa tried to slip away quietly, clutching the sheet like some innocent bystander. "Don't you dare move," I snapped, my voice cutting like a whip. She froze, wide-eyed, finally stripped of her smugness. I wanted them both to sit there and feel the weight of every sacrifice they'd turned into a mockery. I wanted them to drown in it. I grabbed Alan's clothes from the chair and hurled them at his chest so hard he stumbled back. "Get out!" I screamed, my voice shaking the walls. "Both of you, out of my house now!" The word "my" cracked like thunder. I pointed to the walls, to the ceiling above us. "This roof, these walls, every inch of it was paid with my blood, my sweat, my sacrifices, and you will never enjoy another second of it." Alan stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a drowning man. Vanessa scrambled off the bed, clutching her bundle of clothes, her face burning red. I didn't stop. I couldn't. The fury kept coming like waves crashing against a shore. You thought you could humiliate me here, in the home I built for you? You thought I'd just swallow this like I swallowed every complaint, every sigh, every cold dinner? My voice rose higher. Not this time. Not ever again. I stormed toward the door and flung it open wide, my voice booming down the street. Neighbors peeked from their windows as Alan and Vanessa stumbled out half-dressed, their shame laid bare for everyone to see. I stood there, shaking, but powerful, the storm finally unleashed. For the first time in years, my voice was louder than his excuses, and it was enough to silence them both. The next morning, I didn't wait for apologies. I didn't wait for tears or excuses or promises that would dissolve like smoke. I went straight to my lawyer's office and filed for divorce. It was almost mechanical, like checking a box, but inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. For once, the weight wasn't on my shoulders. I wasn't saving him anymore. I was saving myself. Alan tried, of course. He called, he begged, he even showed up outside the hospital once, his face drawn and desperate. But every word he spoke sounded like the echo of a man who had already lost. His reputation collapsed quickly. Our neighbors had seen everything, and the whispers spread like wildfire. His business dreams withered too. Without my savings, without my credibility, he had nothing left to stand on. And Vanessa? She didn't stick around long. Shame has a way of suffocating people like her. She slipped away quietly, leaving Alan to sit in the ruins he had built with his own hands. I didn't even waste the energy to gloat. I simply turned my focus back to me, to the future I had always been capable of building, this time without him dragging me down. For the first time in years, my home felt like mine again. No more waiting for footsteps that never came. No more silent dinners that left me emptier than the plate. The walls seemed brighter, the air lighter, as if the house itself was relieved he was gone. I started sleeping better, waking up without that dull ache of resentment in my chest. Healing wasn't instant, but it was real. I poured myself into something new, me. I invested the same strength I once gave to Alan's dream into my own future. I explored the idea of opening a small clinic, a place where my patients could feel cared for beyond the sterile walls of a hospital. Every plan, every step forward, reminded me that my sacrifices had never been wasted. They had built resilience, independence, and a future that was finally mine to claim. And slowly, pride replaced the shame I had once carried. I wasn't the woman he had broken. I was the woman who had endured, who had walked through fire and come out unburned. The mirror no longer reflected exhaustion or defeat. It reflected strength. And that strength was mine to keep, no matter who stayed or who left. The day I walked back into the hospital for another shift, everything felt different. The same fluorescent lights glared overhead, the same antiseptic smell filled the halls, but I wasn't dragging myself forward anymore. I was standing tall. My steps echoed with purpose, not exhaustion. I wasn't carrying Alan's dream on my back. I was carrying my own. Colleagues smiled at me, unaware of the storm I had weathered, and I smiled back, quietly proud of the strength I had found in myself. Patients reached for my hand, trusting me with their lives, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't running on empty. My energy came from within, not from the hope of someone else's approval. I had worked myself to the bone for him, and in the end, he lost everything. But I kept the house, the future, and, most of all, my pride. Alan walked away with nothing but shame, and that was his burden to carry. Mine was different: resilience, dignity, and the unshakable knowledge that I had survived the worst and come out stronger than ever.